Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to model a low poly set of human teeth and we're gonna make sure to get as high quality as possible using some detailed sculpting and normal baking. So let's get started. First of all, let's remove all of this by using pressing A and to select everything, and then just press X to remove it. And then we're gonna add a cylinder here. I'm going to remove the top and the bottom face of that cylinder. And if you're wondering what I'm doing, you can always look down here to see what's going on the screen. And then I'm going to go into front face by pressing numpad 1 just to make sure that we remove the back side of this cylinder, like so. Press X, remove faces, like that. And then we're going to scale this down a bit by pressing S to scale and Z to scale it down, like so. I'm going to go in here and add a solidify modifier and increase the thickness a bit. This is just to make a solid model, like so. What we're then going to do is we're going to see here if it looks okay. Might be a bit too thick. Let's do that again. Probably like that. Let's go into object mode again. Apply. That looks more like you want this to look like squares, as good as possible. Then select these two edges here. Select the proportional editing mode. What happens then is that when I move here by pressing G, I actually only move. I move proportionally all the vertices around the selected parts according to this circle up here. And then when I move, I can press Y to move just along the Y-axis. Move that a bit forward. And perhaps move this a bit back, just to make sure that we have front teeth here a bit more thin, like that. What I would like to do then is to add some loop cuts here. I'm going to add 2 loop cuts, and this is going to be a low poly model. But to get that low poly model, I'm first going to make a bit higher quality model and continue from there. And then reduce the poly count later. So what you want to do then is you want to use the edge slide here to slide these edges into the like that, so that you get 3 loops here for each in between each tooth. Like that. What you can do now is, instead of doing everything twice, I am going to do it like that. I'm going to do it like that. Okay. Instead of doing everything again on this side, I'm actually going to remove everything on this side and press the X-ray button here. And then I'm going to select all the faces to the right of this. X, remove the faces, like that. And then I'm going to add a mirror modifier instead. That way, everything we do here is mirrored here. Great. So what we're going to do then is to press A, right click, and take shade smooth. Looks like this. You get some weird results here, but that's okay. And we're then going to select these here. I would say that we will probably want to rotate this a bit. So press R, Z to rotate on the Z axis. And I'm going to make sure that we get more of a good shape here for the teeth. Do the same thing there. The other ones look fine. Okay, great. Then I'm going to select the edges in between the teeth, like so. Probably those two there. And press G and Z to move this down a bit, just a tad, like that. And then I'm going to add a couple of loop cuts here, just to make sure that we have somewhat of a high quality model like that. Great. I can then select all these. If you hold Alt, you can select everything along a loop like that. But then I'm gonna smooth this out a bit, so you don't get these weird lines I had before. And then what you can see here in the middle of the mirror is that this is just moving. If I move this around, it's not gonna actually stop anywhere. So what you do then is you turn on clipping here, and then you can actually merge all the vertices here in the middle, which is great. Okay, like that. This looks a bit strange. I think I should turn off that one. Okay, good. Now we have our base model. I might actually want to move everything up a bit, because you would like to have a higher fidelity of the model in the top than in the bottom, like that. Good. Okay, let's start this. Maybe do a bit of smoothing of the vertices again, just to make sure that we have everything as we want it. And then I'm gonna select the faces down here, and yeah, there I'm gonna try to select everything along this path, and I'm gonna scale it along the z-axis, and I'm gonna put 0 to make everything sit in the same plane like that. Great. So this will be a good base. So what we're going to do then is we're going to add a first we're going to apply this mirror so that we actually have a solid model here, like so. And then we're going to add a multi-resolution modifier. We're going to subdivide this, I would say 5 times. That way we actually have, when we sculpt, we have 500,000 faces, but the model is actually only, 544 faces. So let's start sculpting. I'm going to reduce the strength a bit here. I'm going to choose the crease tool here, reduce the radius around that, and then I'm going to start modeling the teeth. So what I do here is I need to make sure that I have mirror on here on the x-axis. Then you see here when these two dots combine, you are in the middle. So I'm going to start by creating the front tooth here. Usually have to undo and redo a bit just to make sure that you get it right. Like that. Do the same thing for each tooth here. Right. Like that. Fortunately, this cylinder, a quarter of the cylinder actually has 8 faces, and the human teeth have 7 teeth on each side here, 14 in the bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we need 1 more. Like that. So it's quite a good way of getting a correct size of the or I know where the teeth are going to be positioned by just using these small creases here. Okay, let's do the same thing in the back. Like that. Do the same thing here. Great. Do the same thing here. So we're gonna add all the 7 teeth, and since we have the mirroring, it's gonna end up being 14. If you press Alt and middle click anywhere, you will actually focus the view on that position and rotate around it. It's super helpful if you didn't know. And let's do the same thing here. Good. We're starting to get somewhere. Just try to further enhance the gap between the teeth here, like so. So good. And then I'm probably gonna go in here again and further enhance these two. Doesn't really matter if you get some small errors here and there. That can always be done, fixed later. And that's the beauty of the sculpting. Good. Nice. And then I'll choose the grab tool here. Increase the radius a bit. Decrease the strength. I'm just gonna pull on each of the teeth down a bit, just to make it more pronounced. Like that. Then reshape the teeth to look a bit more realistic. Great, and then pull this one down a bit. Okay, like that. I would like to add some additional creases here. Just let's do this. Let's do this quite iteratively. I just do some work here, and then I move on. Then you get a fresh set of eyes on it next time you look. Okay, great. Something like that. And let's do the same thing here. We're going to use the grab tool again. Increase the radius a bit. Do the same thing here. Just make sure that doesn't really destroy anything back here. It does a bit. So then reduce the radius a bit, just to make sure that you don't mess anything up on the other side while doing it on this side. So, okay, like so. Great. Yeah, this looks good. I can put this down a bit here. Yes, that perhaps. It's not going to be exactly looking like human teeth. We're going to make it look very convincing. But I mean, if you really look, you will find some weird things here and there. I'm not an expert in anatomy, so but yeah. Then we're gonna do press this button here, press minus, just to, and then we're gonna add some, increase the radius, reduce the strength. We're gonna add some thinning on these teeth here, and a bit on this too, that, and then we're gonna decrease the radius a bit, increase the strength. We're gonna just add some, detailed features on the teeth, like so. Maybe not that much, just wear and tear, so that it looks more realistic. Okay, great. Then we're gonna go in and do some pits here between each tooth, make it a bit more realistic. Great, like so. So I think this is quite a good start. What we can do then is, you can see this base mesh, and if you go into shape here, apply base, then the base mesh here will try to follow the newly modeled multi-resolution sculpt. So that's great. So now we're going to make sure to have an unwrapped model. We'll do that by selecting the edges along this path here. By holding control, we're just gonna keep going here until we have selected all of those, and then the same on the other side, like that. We're gonna right click and choose mark seam, and we're gonna make sure that this is then what we're gonna fold all of this out from. We select the faces using face select and A to select all. Right click, UV unwrap faces and unwrap. If we then look in the UV editor up here, you can see that we have an unwrapped model here. And what we can do then is to start baking. What you want to do then is to go into object mode, select your model, rename it to something like teeth_LP. You can then duplicate this model by holding Shift D. Looks like this. Press Escape to make sure that the models are overlapping. You name this HP as in high poly, and then in the low poly model, you want to go into the modifier here and remove the multi-resolution modifier. So then we have one high poly and one low poly model. And what you want to do then is to bake the high poly model into a normal map on the low poly model. And this can be done natively in Blender using the render properties here, cycles, bake. But I usually use a much more streamlined process called TexTools. It's a plugin. I'm gonna add a link to the description in the description below where you can download it. It is extremely helpful, and I highly recommend it. So what you want to do here is you want to increase the size of the texture from 512 to something higher, maybe like 2048. You then want to make sure that you have these two icons visible. So this is the icon indicating that we actually have a low poly model, and this one indicates that we have a high poly model selected. So if I only select the low poly model, it will look like that, and if I select both, it will look like that. So this is what you want. Then you can press bake and wait a couple of seconds, and you get a model like this. And what you can see here is that it's actually a bit yellow here. And to solve that, you can increase the cage extrusion and ray distance here. And then press bake once more. And it looks like this. This is what you want. You should probably, try to extend the UV map so it covers all of this. But for now, we're not going to do that. Doesn't really matter. So now you can hide the high poly model, go into the low poly model, and go into shading. Add a new material by pressing there. Add a texture, an image texture, and select our normal tangent here. Add a vector and normal map. Pull the color from the texture into there, and the normal into the normal of the output of the material. And now when you look here, you can see that we have baked our map onto the low poly model. Great so far. So what do we do then? Well, then we want to add the color texture, and I usually go into this tab here, the material properties, select the yellow dot here, and select image texture, and then you select a new image texture. Let's call it base color something. You want to scale this up. We'd like to have 2048 by 2048, and set the color to something. I would say something like a pinkish red hue would be fine. Okay, it looks like this then. Great. So this is our low poly model. So we're gonna start texture painting that. So make sure you have the shading as viewport shading, so you can actually see how the normal map looks, and so you can draw according to how the teeth look in the normal map. So what you do then, you can reduce the radius maybe a tad here, and then you don't want to have completely white, because that will look very unnatural. What you want to have is a bit yellow, and then start to texture here. Just paint along how the teeth look here, like that. Doesn't need to be completely correct right now. And make sure to have the X mirror button ticked there. make sure that you get painting on the other side of the model, so you don't have to do this twice. Do the same thing in the back here. And then top. You more or less just paint over everything here. The main issue can be if you paint like this and you paint too much up here, you paint on the other side. So that's the only thing you want to try to avoid. But otherwise, just paint on, fill it in. Make sure to get this too. Like so. Perhaps want to do that. Okay. Now we have colored in the teeth. That looks good. You can see that I actually got some white here, and then you can press here, select the eyedropper here, and select that color, and just fill that. Great. Okay, this looks okay. What we can do then is to actually reduce the roughness here of the material, and it will look much better like that. We can then start to, let's see, do some additional painting here. I would like to choose some whitish color here, reduce the strength quite a bit, and then just do a bit of a, paint here so it looks like the teeth are actually continuing in below the gum here. The same thing here. Okay, great. Looks good. And then let's add some variation here. Let's maybe a bit of a orange here, and just further decrease the strength here, and just try to get some variation going here that will really sell the realism of the look. Okay, do the same thing here. And what you also can do then is to just add some blood vessels and stuff. I'm not gonna go into this detail, but I mean, if you want to really make a high quality color texture here, you can just add that. But just paint some blood vessels just to make it look a bit more realistic. But I mean, that is not necessary. But I would say that this looks quite good. You can go into as much detail as you want, but this looks quite okay in terms of teeth, I would say. So what we can do then is to see if we can further reduce the poly count here. Right now we have 544 faces. If you hold Alt and select loop here, you can try to remove it. I would say that we first probably want to remove this one, but that is actually one of our edges here for the UV mapping, so that would probably be bad. But I would say that we should probably be able to select all of these, like so, and start by pressing S, and pressing S to scale along the Z-axis, and press 0 just to make sure that we have something like that. And then you can select this, press X, and dissolve edges. Press that, X, dissolve edges. Just try to dissolve as many edges as you want, because what you're trying to achieve here depends on what you're going to use the model for. I mean, if you're going to have very many of these in a game, for instance, then you would probably want to reduce the faces even more. But I mean, 250 faces is probably okay for most situations. But what we can do, and I'm going to show you how, is let's start by having this one, duplicate that one. You can do LOD models, level of detail models. So let's call this LOD 1. And you can further decrease this one by further so on the edges. You can maybe remove a lot of these here, the spaces between the teeth, and sometimes this will become a bit weird. Let's see. Oh, it looks fine. And then maybe remove every other. Let's start in the middle here. Let's see, yeah, let's remove every other edge loop here. That, maybe have 2 here in the middle just for good measures. That, this always. Then you have a very low poly, it's 62 faces. You can go further if you want. And then I'm going to select all of these here. And I'm going to scale cell 0 just to make sure that it's like completely flat. And then we have our teeth here. Really low poly, 62 faces as I said. And then you can select this one in object mode, Shift D to just duplicate it, rotate this along the y-axis 180 degrees, move it up, and then you have your top set of teeth. I mean, you might want to do some features here with just G and move it along the y-axis here. Maybe you would like to just move down the front teeth a bit, just to make it a bit more different. And of course, you can use the same process as we've done earlier here, and just make a new set of top teeth. But yeah, this is more or less the process. And I'm going to use these teeth to model a face a bit later. So yeah, stay tuned. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. And I'll try to add more videos just like this. Thank you very much.